Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the season finale of Rick and Morty, star Mort Rickturn of the Jerri. And this is a pretty good one. I really liked what they did here. Granted, it does feel packed to the brim with shit. But they are able to keep the pacing very well and weaving people in and out through their various kind of parts. And it worked overall pretty well in my opinion. So, the episode starts out and we see that there is this person in space like doing stuff to the Galactic Federation kind of shit. You're like, screw you. Just remember to tell him that it was Beth Smith, and we get this joke of like, wow, that is just a really generic name. And before she's able to let the dude go, she's just like, fuck this, whatever, and shoots him. She, of course, is then going off to her resistance base and getting patched up and everything, and they see that the Federation now has this pretty much Death Star kind of thing, but it doesn't have a stupid thing that'll pretty much blow it up, and it's also sponsored by Wrangler. That actually does become important. And while the doctor's kind of checking her out and everything, we find this device in her throat. She's like, motherfucker kind of shit. And so she's like, I'm gonna go kill my father, pretty much. So we then get back to Earth, and we see that the family's eating breakfast and all that, and they're pretty much getting ready to go to Dr. Wong, the therapist that they had gone to previously, pretty much prominently featured with the whole Pickle Rick incident. And Rick's like, I don't want to go, I feel like I'm disintegrating, and he disappears. Jerry's like, what the hell? And of course Morty's like, he's just got an invisibility belt. And then Jerry goes to grab him, and he's like, dude, you like grabbed my balls. That's gonna feel in like 10 seconds. And then Summer's like, hey, Grandpa Rick, can I use that invisibility belt because it'll piss Morty off? And he's like, sure, yeah, go nuts. Of course, they then start chasing each other for the invisibility belt. So then Rick's like, hey, you guys will have something to kind of see at your therapy session and all that. He of course gets into his into the garage, sets off the whole therapy kind of scenario thing, and is going to be like tinkering around with stuff. But of course, Space Beth's there, and he's like, "Why the fuck did you put that in me?" And he's like, "Just let me kind of talk to you about this." But of course, they start fighting, and it's really kind of cool because Beth pretty much has the same kind of shit. Well, not the same level, but same kind of shit that like Rick does, and they kind of have a pretty good kind of fight as they're like going through. She pretty much pins him up and says, pretty much, I'm just gonna kill you now. But of course, he's able to show that the other Beth has something in her throat as well. And he's like, yeah, that would have given you her memories, and then she would have disintegrated and everything. It's like, alright, fine, let's figure out what's going on with this. And of course, Rick's able to pretty much get himself out of that situation by kind of like freezing her or whatnot. We also switch over. We see that Summer is using the invisibility belt to sneak into this hot dude's house at their school and kind of sniff her shit, sniff his shit. And Morty's able to come in, uses the thermal goggles, figures her out, and is able to. They get into a stalemate, and it's like, all right, fine, let's see this. Hour on, hour off kind of shit. One gets the goggles, one gets the belt. He's like, all right, cool, that'll work. And of course, he's got the belt now, but she's able to. She tries to trick him and takes the belt, smashes the goggles, like, yeah, screw you, fuck that sharing shit. But Morty's like, hey, yeah, wrong belt there. And it's really interesting because Morty has definitely had a. Well, it's funny because the whole thing makes fun of the arcs and everything, but we've seen Morty grow a lot throughout the different seasons, and a lot in this one where he's able to pinpoint more of Rick's shit and other people's shit more accurately than he would have previously. He's like, yeah, I got this. So she's like, oh, so I'll see you at like cheerleading practice or whatnot. Morty of course runs off, and this starts the whole other kind of arc of it as he's going to the girls' locker room at the high school, and we see that Beth and Jerri are at the therapist office, and of course this starts to intercede with what's going on with Space Beth. Where the Federation comes in with Tammy in tow as the leader and everything, looking for Beth because she's the most wanted. We had seen that, Rick and Beth, Space Beth, talked about how she was essentially like his hero version, that he was 30 years ago, and that she's pretty much doing Star Wars shit. Of course, they see that the Federation's kind of in tow and all that, and they have to go and figure out what's going on with what she thinks is Clone Beth, but Rick's sending mixed signals with that kind of shit. So we see that that's where they kind of intersect. Rick's has like built-in escape modules for the whole kind of therapist office, so they're able to like shoot all the insect people, and he's able to kind of like mess around with Tammy before he's able to like get Jerri and regular Beth out of there as they're getting chased by Space Beth and Tammy and the rest of them. This kind of starts to link up with Morty and Summer, as Summer pretty much goes in because Morty was going to hide in the locker room and watch the girls change. She comes in, uses a fire hose on, not a fire hose, fire extinguisher on him, and he's like running out. He's covered in the shit. She's able to like knock his ass out and use the invisibility belt, and then of course one of the other Federation comes by and is like, Morty Smith, stop right there, kind of shit. But of course we then see the fire extinguisher floating, and they're like, oh shit, are you like do you have like telekinetic powers and shit? Can you stop our hearts and shit? You're like, yeah, fuck you, man. Essentially, he starts to roll with it because they're really afraid that he'd do shit to him. So, our group of Rick and his cadre are pretty much forced down, well, because Earth Beth wants to talk with Space Beth and see what's going on. And they kind of are feeling each other out before Tammy comes out and they're like, hey, let's kind of get this sorted out. They pretty much get everybody up and all that. Well, both of the best up to the Death Star kind of thing, because they're like, hey, we're going to start destroying the Earth and all that shit. And as they see that pretty much Rick and Jerri are going to be kind of screwed over, at first Tammy's like, yeah, as long as we treat you as a non-threat, we don't have to do shit with you, Rick. He's like, okay. But Jerry's like, hey, because that's pretty much one of his stick things back when he was at the therapist's office with the other bugs. He's like, all I can do is say, hey, what the fuck, man? Of course, they're then changing their mind and are getting ready to kill them, but that's, of course, where Morty and Summer tag team. Of course, Summer is invisible and threw the gun to Jerri, but of course, as Rick goes to hold Tammy hostage, he says, alright, everybody drop your guns, except you, Jerri, goddammit. But of course, Morty is in one of the spaceships shooting shit, so he's like, yeah, we did this was our arc and all that. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. So they have to go and pretty much do Star Wars to take over the whole Death Star, with Rick doing this kind of cool thing where he made all these like little portals and used this like really interesting disco ball gun. I'll call it a disco ball gun because it like disco lasered shit and killed everything. So they get on the ship, they take Tammy out because Rick's like, fuck this shit. And well, Tammy's already dead on Earth. They're pretty much using her body to open up shit. And they give Jerri the invisibility belt because he has to go to the bathroom. And it's like, it's a Death Star, just pee fucking anywhere. And he evidently can't go when people are watching, even though he's invisible. So Rick goes off to find the Beths. Morty and Summer go off to destroy the Death Star. And we see that the Beths are trying to figure out who's the clone and who's not, but they're pretty much just reached the conclusion that Rick's a shithead. And I'm just like, fine, whatever, fuck it. Of course, they're able to get out by themselves and pretty much just wreck ass going through. Morty and Summer are able to find where the controls are for the death ray. Well, Morty has to use one of the grades to take out one of the people. And they're trying to figure out what to do. It's like, okay, evidently this thing can destroy people, but it only leaves behind pants. So what they do is they have Morty take off his pants, distract the guard people. Summer goes in, throws the pants into the laser right, and that stops the Death Star because it was sponsored by Wrangler, and that was pretty funny. We also got another thing where they made fun of where Rick was telling that if you guys stop doing what you're doing the best, we'll go to McDonald's. Fine, Wendy's. They gave us a lot of money. That was all of the shit they were talking about with like the sponsorships and everything was just on point, and it worked pretty well because normally that shit's usually forced. This just flowed phenomenally. So while that's going on, we see that Rick goes into this giant room and is like, oh, there's not like there's going to be a giant fight here or anything. And of course, Phoenix person comes out and starts this fight with Rick. And Rick really gets his ass beat. I mean, he gets some good hits and everything in, but he is fucking torn to shit by the time it's all out. And they get into one hallway, and then, of course, the best shop is like, hey, you don't get to kill him until we beat his ass first. And they pretty much get fucked up by Bird Person, and we see that the only way to get out is Jerri puppeteering Tammy's body. That distracted him enough that they were able to fucking take down Bird Person. Well, they were able to shut him off, actually. And it was just fucked up because of how Jerri was puppeteering Tammy. It was just like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. But since the whole scenario worked out, everybody just goes back to Earth, and we see that they're like, hey, I found a mind game kind of thing, his tube for his memory for who was the clone and who's not. And everybody's like, hey, no, screw that. Evidently, the family's got two awesome moms now with both of the best. Morty is got the go-ahead from Space Bet to like tool around in her ship. It's like, hey, that's pretty cool. And nobody really wants to know what the truth is. They're like, screw it, whatever. And Rick was really fucked up. His like entrails were out as like Phoenix Person was stomping his ass. He's like, all right, fine, whatever. He watches it himself, and we see that Beth gave him the decision if he wanted Beth in his life. So he did make the clone, and then he had him labeled, but then he had the labels removed and switched around so he wouldn't know who it was. And he's like, yeah, I am a terrible father, but hopefully I can be a better friend. And we see that he brings out Phoenix Person to like boot him back up, see how it's going on. Of course, Tammy was killed, so he's like, fuck you, man. He's like, all right, let you go a little bit longer, and shut it out. We see that Rick is in his low point. It's like the opposite of where we pretty much seen him mostly previously, because the family's now moving on from him and can actually do kind of the stuff that he was trying to keep in control for himself. We've got Space Beth, who does some of the same stuff that he does, granted not completely with the portal technology and everything, and it's just working in a different kind of dynamic with the family. We'll have to see kind of how that works out. We didn't get anything on Evil Morty or whatnot, and I don't really mind that. If that just pops up again at some point, I would like that. That would be my best case scenario, but if they do something kind of with what they did here, because they had teased like Tammy and everything with the Federation and Phoenix Person and everything, I can't wait to see what they do with that. And we end off with Jerri throwing away the invisibility belt and it getting put into a trash truck, making that invisible, and then him becoming a trash truck vigilante dude in an invisible truck until it runs out of gas. You're like, hey, yeah, here's a spinoff kind of thing. I like them making fun of the spinoff, and I'm like, okay, I respect that. And it's just like, oh god, he fucking like trash dumpstered a fucking pimp into it, and it's just like, okay, didn't expect that. All right, so overall, I enjoyed this finale and think it did a good job of providing a nice finale to the kind of strangeness that we've had with this season of getting 5 episodes, then a break, and then the last 5 episodes, and just giving us interesting stories with these characters, and then just being like, okay, guess we'll see where they'll go next in the next season. So yeah, I would like to know when that would happen, but I'm like, I'm patient. Just make it good and do it right, and who cares when it comes? You know? Do it right, do it good. We're good with this, just like this episode. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.